Hey there. If you follow us here on our YouTube channel or our website, you know my name is Scott Talley. I am the owner broker here at 5Market Realty, where we like to do market updates to keep our clients, our past clients, and really anyone that's interested in Athens area real estate informed on what we're seeing out there in the Athens area real estate market. If any of that interests you, home sales and home figures, or even new listings, be sure to click subscribe. But today we're going to talk about what we saw last August, or excuse me, this past August, and what the trends are this year. And then we're going to have a pretty frank discussion about the reality of what we're seeing nationally in home sales and what's been going on. What we try to do is just give you the facts as they are, not try to convince you on something or sell you on something. This is information that is given to you for free about what we're seeing in the market. So what we saw was an uptick in August home sales. We'll discuss that. And of course, national homes information from Keeping Current Matters. Let's go ahead and get to this next slide so we can get started. Now, as you know, we like to track four main things. It's going to be new listings. It's going to be days on market, home prices, and the total amount of home sales. So because I've got some extra slides today from Keeping Current Matters, I'm going to go ahead and get started. A lot of the news is the same as we've seen. The listings are flat, just about 2%, a little over 1.5% when compared to last year, 1,500 plus to 1,500 plus last year. The bigger news is really going to be in days on market and what we're seeing on the total amount of home sales. That red arrow just popped up showing you that we're up year to date 22% on the days on market. And down here, the second arrow is going to show you that we are down 9% on home sales from last year. And almost, remember, I've said before that we've seen 2025 has acted like 2023. Well, look here, 1,056 to 1,068 in 2023. 2023 locally was not a very good year for the total amount of transactions. And unfortunately, we're seeing that very same trend play out here this year. Here's where some good news is, though. The month of August, which is typically one of our slowest times, that and September for residential home sales, it's just the ebbs and flows of getting back to school. That's a market that is generally slow after July. Now, if you recall, in our last market update, we had the worst July that I could track in transaction total in the MLS for Athens. But we actually saw an uptick this past August, and we saw a trend of 18% more with 134 home sales in August. We felt it here in our office. We just saw more activity. And I will say, we're seeing more buyer activity right now. I'm not sure what's changed. It might have been a slight adjustment in mortgage rates, but we have seen more buyers enter the market and start looking at property this past August. But there's one more thing to point out. Sorry, I got one more error to go here, is that 34% increase. Just the month of August, you can see that the days on market is 71 there. So we are seeing homes sit longer. We've been tracking this for a long time. We're telling you what it is. If you're a home seller, obviously you're starting to realize that that is a reality. We're seeing markets behave differently depending on the property, the seller situation, the location. It's really hard to tell you exactly, unless your specific property, what's going to happen, but be sure to pay attention to your pricing. Right now, we're looking at the monthly inventory of homes. And one thing I want to point out is the month of August, while we did come down, that's actually a trend that we see. When things don't sell in July, they tend to come back off the market and then maybe come back on later in the year. But right now, even though we saw it come down from around 480 to 426, we're still 14% above last August. And do you remember when we just talked about the uptick in home sales for the month of August? Well, I went back and I looked at the month of August home sales for Clark and Oconee County all the way back to 2017. And one of the things you're going to note here is that from 2017 all the way through 2021, we had over 200 home sales almost every month of August. And we haven't behaved that way in a while. You can see after the interest rate declines, 2022 went down to 137, and then even lower in 23, even lower in 24 for the month of August. But we saw an 18% increase, a little more in line with 2022. And so that was a little bit of a good sign. And I know that what we're experiencing here in the market is we're seeing a little bit more buyer activity than we did over June and July, which is sort of a sign that our market's behaving erratically and not in line with consistent trends. But there is a reality there that these home sales are down. And that's what we want to talk about next. As we're about halfway through, we're going to transition into a little bit of national market news. And we've been doing these videos now almost 5 years, and I've tried to always give you the facts as they are. And what we've been saying and what I've been showing you is that home sales are down, not so much price, but home sales and activity are down. And there's a lot of talk about recession. And the reality is when people feel bad about something, they have a tendency not to do things. Today is September 11th. That's obviously a notable day in our country's history. And yesterday, a horrific thing happened to a person, very horrific. And I'd really we'll move on past that and talk about what I need to talk about. But, it says here from Lending Tree that nearly 2 in 3 Americans think a recession is coming, and 74% of Americans admit that world news or current events affect their financial decisions. So the reason these home sales have gone down is a multitude of things. We have higher prices, we have higher interest rates, we have a climate where people are just made very anxious about politics, about the news. People are worried about the economy for numerous reasons, tariffs, and really, the fact is, most people are not an expert on what they're worried about. I remember in 2020 that people thought the housing market was going to crash, and in fact, it went the opposite way. Almost every person in April of 2020 was wrong about what was going to happen. So let's talk about what we have been seeing. The fact of the matter is that the housing market for transaction totals has been in a recession. This isn't news. We have been in it. Today's mortgage rates already have the anticipated September Fed rate cut priced in. This means that when the Fed officially announces the cut, we should expect a significant corresponding drop in mortgage rates. And that's what I'm talking about is in the news, they have this talk of recession and now the Fed might cut the interest rates. Well, as far as real estate goes, the transaction total, this has been going on for a while now. And so we might be positioned to see something change in our favor. Who knows? We're going to have to see it play out, but we have already seen rates come down last month. So if the Fed does announce a Fed funds rate cut, don't expect that to have some drastic impact on the mortgage rates. It's already there. And as you can see right here, this is the 30-year fixed mortgage rate. Mortgage rates declined a week after the jobs report. So here's August 1st. This is where we were about August 1st. And then look at what mortgage rates did. And right now, as about the end of August, they were down around 6.5. We're seeing people get less than that right now. So low sixes is actually feeling pretty good at the moment. But let's go to another quote here. While there will be significant regional variation, the underlying fundamental conditions of the national housing market support a national moderation of house prices rather than a sharp decline. Again, this is a quote from the Deputy Chief Economist at First American talking about home values. Well, what I'm talking about is this has been going on. Listing prices have already flattened. You remember, and maybe if you follow this a few months back, I said, we're already in it. And that's the reality of it is. And that means that's not bad news. That actually could be good news. That means there's more homes for sale. It means we might see a drop in interest rate climate. And it means if you need to buy a property, you will have options. But if you look back from September of 2022, this is the median listing price. You can see in January to about May, it goes up. And then over the summer, it comes down, back up in the spring, down over the summer, up in the spring. But overall, it's staying right below 450 nationally. And this is from Realtor.com. So this has been a recurring trend. This is not something new. It's already been going on. Let's go to the next slide. One more quote. The housing market has cooled modestly in 2025, but the extent and persistence of rebalancing really varies across the country. And regionally, home buyers and sellers are likely to experience a very different market. That's Danielle Hill from Realtor.com. I alluded to this earlier. This market is acting erratically because one property, depending on its location or what it is, might have a situation where the seller is very much in control. Another property in a more traditional residential housing market, the buyers may be holding more of the cards. So you need to pay attention to what you have if you're a seller, what your price is. And if you're a buyer, you need to recognize that there are opportunities out there depending on what you're trying to buy. Opportunities means negotiations on price, negotiations on concessions, opportunity to look at various properties. That's what we're seeing is a more balancing market coming out, home prices cooling. And then we're going to look at this graph here, the percentage change in home prices varying by region. We're here in the South Atlantic, and you can see that's just over 1%, whereas if you get into Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, it's closer to 4% or a little over 4%. The point is, what's going on in the real estate market is not the same across the country. You can see here in New England and the Mid-Atlantic, they have less homes on the market. So they've seen an increase of over 6% and over 5%. What's happening in the South is we actually have more listings than we have buyers currently, and that's flattening out the market, which is a good thing. If these prices continue to do what they were doing, it would have been not sustainable. So we've been working through it, and we're in that process. And because these home sales have slowed down, doesn't mean it's the end of the world. So median sale prices of homes the last 50 years. The reason I say this is I started this in 2004, and I've seen the ebbs and flows of this. This is a graph kind of going back to the 1980s of where the real estate price of homes went down and what happened there. In the 1980s, this graph, it went down. What happens there after the rest of the 80s? We go up. 1991, the price goes down. Then we trend back up. This is 2008. This is the most significant decline we saw. I was working in real estate through this time, and you can see right here this sharp decline. But what happened? The prices went up. Here we are in 2020. Remember when I mentioned April of 2020? There was a lot of fear of COVID. People were worried about the market, and then the opposite happened. And right here, we can notice that national home sale prices have trended down in the last few years. But you know what's probably going to happen based on what history tells us? At some point, maybe sooner than later, maybe not as soon as we hope, but that graph's going to continue to trend in the way it always has. And that's something that we just try to look back at history and see what we can learn from it when we're going through changes in the economy and real estate market. It's kind of harping on what I just said. This isn't the first slowdown of what happened. You can see the peak sales rate basically in the early 1980s went down to 2 million. 2008, it went down, dropped to 3.5. That's a 51% decline. 50% decline in the early 80s. COVID, it went down by 27%. And over here, it's down almost 40%. So what happened after these drops? It took 4 years to get through that in the 80s. It took 3 years to come back after 2008. And in 2020, it only took 8 months because of that very unique time that we had through COVID. And what we've been dealing with since 2022, what did I say earlier? We've been in it since 2022. It's dropped by about 40%. And the end of this, or when the comeback starts to happen on the amount of transactions, is to be determined, but it will happen. So this is our group here at 5Market Realty. Sorry for the long-winded today. Kind of had to combine two bits of information locally and national trends, and wanted to speak frank with you. Anyone here in this picture can help you. info@5mrealty.com. Be sure to click subscribe. Thank you for sticking with me for almost 12 minutes. That's a lot of time to listen to my voice. So thank you so much for following us, and have a great week. Go Dogs, beat Tennessee.